is Melanie Cervantes. I'm originally from LA. I identify as a Chicana Indígena, which basically means, like, my parents identify as Mexican, but our family's roots are indigenous to this landmass, and so I own that indigeneity. And my politics come from the spirituality that I find myself grounded in every aspect of my life. So the content of the work doesn't come just necessarily from a political space, if not a spiritual and political one, or a political one that's informed by my spirituality. And you'll be able to see kind of the threads of that come out in the pieces. And I think what I'd like to do is just go through the slides because it's really like a history in prints. This is my first print. It's a print that's dedicated to a amazing Chicana Tejana lesbian, academic, brilliant, dyke, feminist, theoretician, real woman who passed away, who was like a huge influence on the way that I see the world. And so I really felt like I wanted to honor her because I at the time didn't see any visual art that was honoring her, and I was trying to learn how to screen print at Lane College, and so I decided to do the layout for this. And this was my first print with the Taller Tupac Amaru, which is our collective studio. There's 3 of us who basically consolidate the resources in order for us to own the means of production. So we own all of the equipment in order to be able to do the screen printing, and it really, politically it frees us up from having to answer to anyone. We don't have to answer to a nonprofit. We don't have to answer to, someone who's got a different agenda than us. We kind of do what we want. That doesn't mean that we don't hold ourselves accountable and really ask the communities that we serve, because all of the work is a reflection of the communities that we feel we're connected to, and we ask them to hold us accountable because we really feel like it's an irresponsible thing to just put messages out that represent people and then, have no accountability for putting out maybe bad messages. So this print I did for Day of the Dead. It's actually kind of bringing some of my LA roots into an offering that I made for my grandfather who had passed away, and it has a lyric from a song that says Memorias lindas de su existencia, like beautiful memories of his existence. And I wanted to do something that was just intricate and beautiful because I had done my Laney stint and was learning from folks that I really look up to as heroes in terms of young political printmakers that were really doing a lot of what I saw in library books that was coming out of the 60s and 70s. And so before I met Jesus and Fabiana, I was like, wow, they're so cool. They were like my heroes on MySpace. And I was so happy when I met them through work. And so I kind of tried to step up just the design. And so we ended up selling these on the street corner in the Mission, and that was the way that I contributed to owning the means of production. We bought like 4 years worth of ink because we sold prints on the corner in the Mission, and so that's what's been able to sustain the political work, because like a lot of times organizations, particularly grassroots organizations, don't have the means to be able to do that. And so one friend described how we do our work as Robin Hood. We take money from institutions, like we may work with the university, like Berkeley. We ask for the resources so that we can help, the community center and the fruit bale that doesn't have the resources to do it. So kind of putting all those resources together and consolidating those things makes it so that we're kind of evening out and redistributing wealth as it exists.
This is another poster to that I did at Mission Gráfica, and this was just another piece on a Zapatista. And one of the things I was really attracted to when I started doing art was this real simple, bold graphic. And this is really reminiscent of a lot of the work that was being done by like different artists like Ospal, which is the Cuban group of poster makers, and another artist, Rupert Garcia, who is an OG in the Bay Area, one of like in the big poster movement that happened in the 60s and 70s. And so this is one of those prints that I did, and this is actually where I ended up getting the idea of Dignidad Revelde for our actual website, which actually kind of ended up being what we call ourselves as this working collaborative.
Melanie Cervantes from Dignidad Revelde.
Y tengo dos preguntas. Una que me la dio, two questions, sorry. One Muteado was so kindly to ask. He's wondering, why are there not that many female artists out in the world today?
So artists, I don't know if that's true. I say printmakers, that's a different story. So I think a lot of the art that mujeres do doesn't get acknowledged as art. We get relegated to a category called crafts, called traditional, like I think like the way I started with tejido and sewing, and there's generations of like women in my family that have done that, but it's not acknowledged as art, it's acknowledged as utilitarian. And the first thing I did was a rebozo. And I was like, this is art. People get trained how to do this, and it's white women who get acknowledged for doing it as art, but our abuelas and our mothers don't get acknowledged in that way, you know? So that I would make that question a little more complicated. I think there's a lot of women that do art, they just don't get their props.
Right on. I was gonna tell him the same thing, but I was like, okay, let me have him get educated. Anyway, my question is, so how do you feel about, since us living in this country as artists, I mean, I consider myself an artist as well, what is the best way to get El Norte and our people where we come from connected and bring about a change in the government and how they live, why they're moving up here? What can artists do in order to change this besides getting together with the community and putting messages out there? What else is there?
Well, I think organizing and looking at the way that our people organize. So if you look at like different pueblos in Mexico, for an example, like they have these remittance systems, right? Where they have whole like communities that send money. They're more organized than people that are seen as organizers are, but we don't acknowledge that as like a model of organizing because it's not an Alinsky model coming out of like, white people in the 60s. It's seen as like, oh, that's what people do, and there's huge connections across borders, right? There's like if you think about even how people move across land, like the idea of migration and the connections that exist, I think we need to tap into that more, and we need to bring the art into that mode of being, because I think there's some dominant ways, and I think like some of the questions that came up tonight around like, oh, well, like you're just kind of doing like the old school way, like those are some of the ways that, it's not even just in the content, it's like in the relationships. So like, are we working with folks that are moving, like they're maybe coming as day laborers and then moving back and forth. Like one of the dope artists that I respect, Artemio Rodriguez, I think he started doing stuff as a day laborer. He's an amazing little artist, and so like understanding that in our midst folks have those relationships, and like how do we serve them with our work in the way that works for them, and seeing that, and acknowledging that as organizing. And that would probably be like my stock answer, like organizing, but being really conscious about like organizing doesn't just look one way, but having many people in an effort versus like a bunch of individuals. Like to me, that's always going to be the way. Like whether it's us organizing as artists into collectives, or us organizing as indigenous displaced people, or us organizing as the masses of people of color that are really changing the way what's known as the United States looks like, and like being organized is the best way to change things.
But in a smart way, you're saying.
Yeah,
so
and in a different way.
It defeats like the whole like, why are you making posters versus making oil paintings? Because posters can get moved around quicker, opposed to oil only high-end